Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of AI and Oats, which is my daily show where I answer questions about AI and react to news articles. And normally I have a bowl of porridge, hence the name, but today, unfortunately, all I have is a Dr. Pepper. So we'll have to stick with that. But if you are new here, which in all likelihood you probably are, welcome. Who am I? Well, I'm Alistair. This is my YouTube channel where I teach people how to use Claude Code and Codex for knowledge work and business workflows and business use cases. But I also run an AI consulting and training business called Dux. So if you'd like to see how we can work with you to find where AI actually fits in your business to grow your revenue and save you time, then please feel free to book a call through the link in the description. And I also have a school community where I share the actual skills I use in Claude Code and Codex and the systems I use. Again, the link for that is also in the description. Anyway, now that the preliminaries are out of the way, let's jump into the questions. So the way this works is during the day, Codex, I have an automation for Codex that goes out and searches various forums to find interesting news articles or questions about AI. It makes this slide deck for me, and then I come home and I answer the questions. So the first one is suggestions on how to develop a tech recruitment platform using Claude. Well, since I don't kind of work directly in tech per se, I think I'll just take this a bit more generally and talk about like use cases of Claude for recruitment. So I've actually worked with some recruitment firms in the past in terms of seeing how they could use Claude Code and that sort of thing within their systems, and that's one thing. I do think that that's one application of Claude within recruitment, is applying it to the existing kind of human-driven system. And now you'd have to look into the regulations for the exact ins and outs of everything, because I think there are probably a few regulations about using it in sort of candidate screening. But fundamentally, if we were thinking in a sort of regulatory free environment, you'd have it, you could easily put in a good kind of criteria of like, what is absolutely necessary, what is desirable, that sort of thing, and then have a panel of agents review applicants from different angles and on these different metrics and criteria, and therefore have a much more advanced pre-screening program. I'm not saying replace. I think recruitment is kind of fundamentally to some degree a sort of people business, so I wouldn't say replace the human judgment at the end, but I'm saying pre-screen them, highlight likely high potential candidates. And to be fair, I think that's what a lot of ATS things do nowadays anyway. But I think some of the more interesting use cases in terms of AI applied on top of the existing systems, I mean, the other use cases from like a recruiter's side of things would obviously be, kind of like, it's very easy to set up a very like high quality meeting transcription to filing system. I mean, I have a skill that just takes takes a meeting, debriefs it, which means breaks it up into like little facts or claims and that sort of thing, and then files them away within my kind of living Carpathy style wiki, and it will add it to like this person's page, all the information about them, and then it will produce a tasks list and then start going on some of the tasks and that sort of thing. So you could apply that to interviews and then automatically update candidate summaries or thing. I mean, I'm not a recruiter exactly, but that sort of thing. The kind of running docs I assume they have about all their candidates. I think the other application to the existing recruitment pipeline is from the applicant side of things. So certainly when I was applying for a lot of finance internships this time last year roughly, I was using Claude a lot. Not Claude Code at that point really, because I'm not sure Claude Code was even out. It probably was just about out, but it certainly wasn't mainstream. But the way I did it then is I kind of substituted Claude projects for skills. So it would have I got super detailed project instructions that now would look like a skill file, skill.md, but I put them as the project instructions. I just got Claude to write them. And it was like, this is exactly how I write cover letters. This is my writing style. This is blah, blah, blah. This is like the canonical 3-paragraph structure you have, whatever it is, why the role, why the firm, why me, whatever. It's gone out of my brain a little bit now. And then I put all my previous cover letters, because I had written some by hand before starting this process, but I put all my, but if you hadn't done some yourself, then when I say by hand, I mean I had typed them out. I obviously did not handwrite them. If you don't have those, then I guess the best thing you can do is just get sort of like ideal examples like from the internet. I don't know, like let's say if you're applying for a finance role, go to Wall Street, Oasis or something like that and download their templates and examples and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I loaded all of my previous cover letters into the project files, and then I also had my CV in there, and then I can't remember if I put it in the instructions or somewhere else, but there were kind of some like canonical examples I would use in every cover letter, like different stories from extra areas of my life, like long distance running and that sort of thing, how it would link to whatever, time management and resilience or something along those lines. Anyway, I had various stories, or like learning Mandarin, how that was difficult, but I kept doing it anyway, or something along those lines. It's been a while, it's been a year. The point was, I got it to the point where all I would have to do is just paste a job description into this project, or even just say like one line, like, I don't know, write a cover letter for a summer analyst internship at Greenhill. And it would give me, like a kind of perfectly formatted, it would sometimes potentially even go and research who the hiring manager was, put their name in, it would match my format exactly, you know, and that sort of thing. And obviously now that seems fairly simple. You just set that up as a skill and probably have some reference markdown files within the skill of, you know, like this is the layout, blah blah blah, these are the, and then you'd have a bank of canonical examples and that sort of thing. But at the time I thought that was pretty smart. And then the other thing it would do is it would do deep research, like it would research the firm, and from the kind of interests and examples it knew that I had, like it knew I was interested in entrepreneurship and AI and that sort of thing, it would then see if the firm does any charitable initiatives, like do they have a charity, like do they do like grants to local small businesses? Okay, excellent, link that to the interest in entrepreneurship. Have they rolled out some new AI program, which almost all of them have? Excellent, link that to the interest in AI. So I think from the candidate side of things, that's a very useful application. And now with Claude Code, that's even easier. Just, you don't even need a project for it. You just work in a folder which has all your cover letters, your CV, and then probably write out your stories and that sort of thing. I think there's an opportunity. I think that this can then lead into what I see as like the future of recruiting in an AI era, which is that I think a lot of people would agree that, and maybe I'm making kind of sweeping statements here, but I think generally a lot of people do not think that the recruitment system is fantastic at this stage. Certainly I think maybe headhunting and that sort of thing is a different question for, you know, executive roles, C-suite, that sort of thing. But I think for entry-level grad jobs, internships, junior roles, that sort of thing, you know, recruiters, and to be fair to them, I mean, what else are they going to do? They get thousands and thousands of applications. They can only look at CVs for seconds. So my thinking is, in the future, so I think the first stage will be, I'm kind of thinking of developing something for individual applicants that was a bit like what I was saying, but just easier for you. So I'd call it like a candidate brain, where what you do is you just do like a really free-flowing interview, like long interview, probably a spoken thing with this kind of AI software. And then it takes, so it looks at your CV, it gets more than just the bullet points on your CV, asks you about those experiences in more detail, then also asks you like what are your interests and those sorts of things, what are hard things you've done in those interests, you know, when have you shown leadership, whatever. The kind of questions that would probably come up in an interview, like an actual interview, but the point is, because you're doing it at your own pace, whatever, you can just say, you know, it's not going to judge you, it's just an LLM. You can get that information out in kind of just a general brain dump, and then it will put it into a coherent, like, candidate brain, which is sort of, I don't know, if you want to use the term second brain, that sort of thing, some kind of like knowledge system. And the idea is that it would then combine that knowledge system it has about you with deep research on any firm you're applying to, and then ultimately also use something like browser automation to go fill out application forms, so that you're not constantly having to, you know, like write a cover letter and then chunk it up to upload it into the ATS thing, which is like, why do you want to work here? Go. Whereas it will just say, why do you want to work here? Okay, well, what firm is this? Boom, research, deep research. Okay, does this link to the candidate's personal interests? Oh yes, here's an interesting story, let's link the two together, and then let's drag in a piece of experience from the CV, but let's spruce it up and plump it up with the extra info we got from the interview. And you see how it's kind of like a living brain that will also learn your writing style through the process of kind of you refining its output, so it'll probably get better over time. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going to finish building that or not. I kind of started it, not that many people watch these videos, but in the off chance that people, you know, did come across this idea and wanted me to build it, then, you know, I'm happy to, if I think there's demand for it. If someone wants to steal my idea as well, I can't stop them. But, you know, anyway, so I guess to finish this, I know this, maybe I'll just do one question today, to be honest. I think this is a very interesting idea. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, recruitment. I think then the next stage of that, and maybe this happens to some extent, but so now we've got this candidate brain. Let's just say, for example's sake, everyone starts using this candidate brain. Now what we have is a pretty deep, like, knowledge base about an individual. Perhaps they're able to, because the pressure is lower just speaking to an LLM, this might even be a richer insight into them than a polished interview answer where they're under stress, it's prepared, that sort of thing. There's just more genuine kind of information about this person. I think fundamentally there's no reason that you couldn't form a sort of persona out of this knowledge base, an AI persona that is, that would then go interview, discuss on your behalf with equivalent personas, or personae if we're being technical, from companies. So like, I don't know, let's just continue with kind of the general finance example, since that's like the area that's like my area of knowledge when it comes to recruiting and that sort of thing. So let's say you have like a JP Morgan persona that will interview with your candidate persona, you have a Goldman Sachs persona that will interview you, you have like a Greenhill persona, you have an Evercore persona, whatever. These all then are looking for different things, and they can talk to your persona and interview you, and that way, and I know people, you know, this sounds like sort of dystopian as I'm describing it, but think about it, that could almost be more accurate and in-depth than the, whatever it is, 10 seconds, if that, a recruiter scans your CV, for which a recruiter scans your CV. And it's also kind of almost no incremental time from you, really, no extra time. Rather than like going and doing hundreds of applications, you just do one, who knows, maybe it's a 20-30 minute interview, and maybe it's a little bit longer than that, and you refine it over time to enrich your candidate brain and form your persona. And then your persona can go and constantly be interviewing for different roles with the AI persona, like with the different company's AI persona, or a different department persona within that company for a different role. And I guess the pushback would be, I'm speaking like AI, I guess the you know, one potential criticism is, okay, but that means that you're basically going to get infinite applications to everything. And the idea is, well, yes, possibly, but if it's not taking any real human time, this is just sort of a constant interaction, like this own AI ecosystem of recruiting AI and applying AI, then that's not really an issue. And obviously any that seem most relevant would be promoted to in-person interviews and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't be surprised, as weird as this concept sounds, if recruitment ends up going in this direction. Maybe it maintains other forms as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this sort of thing starts happening. Anyway, after that extremely long-winded answer, let's move on to another question. Front-end skills. Right, another topic about which I have some interesting thoughts recently. One thing I will, so this is specifically complaining that, like, if they paste in a design, it doesn't copy it very well. I have also found that I came up with some, like, when I was trying to build like my own AI operating system, which combined Claude Code and Codex, which I sort of have half built. I'm still not, I'm not convinced that I can make a better system than Claude Code or Codex individually, so that's why I'm somewhat slow with that project. But anyway, that is unrelated to the question, but fundamentally I came up with some very, very cool mock-ups, which maybe I can show. Alright, so I mean, among other things, this is how I was going to have it look, was like a kind of Roman Empire or Roman Republic themed thing. Like, this would be your agent management platform, this would be like your artifact storage, and who knows, I might still finish it off. I had some other designs as well. Anyway, as you can see, these are, in my opinion, very cool, very detailed designs made by Codex. I still believe that it would be possible to get those as the actual designs. It might make the system a bit slower, but it's fundamentally true, as this post says. When I pasted those mock-ups which Codex had made into Claude Code, or not pasted them, but directly Claude coded them, when it tried to build them out, it did not build them to anywhere near the same level of detail and that sort of thing. And I also think, and I've mentioned it a few times before, if you're just getting Claude Code, Codex I find is a little bit better, but Claude Code in particular, just to design a website or any sort of front end, it's better than it used to be, in terms of it used to look like really bad and obviously kind of AI slop. But now there's a new AI slop, which is usually some sort of italicized thing on top of some, like, not italicized, like italicized lettering on top of normal lettering and that sort of thing. With a kind of, like, I don't know, beige-ish background. Usually there's some kind of terracotta or orange font. It looks fine, like, it looks quite nice, to be fair. It would look fine in isolation, but the issue is that if you're in the know, you can tell that that is the new form of, like, AI slop. It's the new AI generated website. And fundamentally, just recently, a few weeks ago, because there is a front-end design skill in Claude that you can download. It's like an Anthropic plugin, but I don't find it that great in terms of avoiding that new Claude style website that I was just mentioning. So I made my own skill, which is essentially, I went and, well, I didn't actually go and do it. I had, it was either Codex or Claude Code, one of them, go and look up loads of different kind of beautifully designed websites by general consensus and show them to me. I said which ones I liked, which ones I didn't. It then categorized them into, like, this is the ones for editorial things like newspapers, these are the ones for, I don't know, e-commerce, D2C, whatever. And so it has like a families markdown file of the different families of websites, and within those there's lots of pictures and examples and I guess styling formats, but the examples I think are the absolute main thing of the different ideal websites. And then there's a kind of, somewhere in the skill, there's a like a decision tree as to which of the families should you choose based on the task, what's the website trying to do. And the point is that from there it then goes, looks at these canonical examples and makes a much nicer design. So after that very, very long-winded explanation, I think the key to getting decent front-end design is having examples of very nice designs for Claude Code or Codex to use. In terms of getting it to copy a design exactly, I've struggled with that a bit if it's a kind of more complex design like the thing I just showed you. I guess if it's just like a standard HTML design, it's not that hard to copy, to get it to copy that. Anyway, another very long answer to the question, so hopefully it was relevant, but yeah, might have to cut this episode short soon. Why is there no universal builder agentic brain workflow that's already being used, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's lots of people claiming to build a second brain. I kind of claim to have built a second brain, but not really. It's just a kind of fairly systematic filing system, and Claude Code and Codex know how to write new files into the filing system and write the correct front matter on it so that it gets filed correctly, and then I can access it in Obsidian, and then a kind of nightly automation can go check that nothing has drifted too much or that sort of thing, and can also create and update files based on that day's work and that sort of stuff. It's basically just a Carpathy style wiki, which I think is pretty good. The reason I guess there's probably not a universal one is I think it varies quite a lot from person to person in terms of what your use cases are. Are you building a second brain? if you want to call it that, for every single area of your life? Are you building it specifically for business? Are you using it specifically for, fitness, whatever? I think the use cases and how you work as an individual, are you very organised with your filing? Are you not? It's probably better to be organised, but I'll admit I'm not always the most organised with it. That's why luckily I have a nightly automation that cleans it up for me. I think it's just it varies person to person. I feel like that's kind of the nice thing about Claude Code and Codex and all these AI systems is now you can build, maybe you're not going to build production software overnight, but in a few hours, couple days, few weeks, you can very much build your own bespoke tools and software that for your personal use cases are absolutely fine, work very well, and arguably work better than something out of the box because it's bespoke to you, the way you work and that sort of thing. So that's probably why there's no canonical single agentic brain workflow, if that's what this is getting at. That would be my kind of argument. And I think that's a good thing in a way. These AI tools make it easier than ever for people to create their own personal software that suits them, and that is why I think they're so fun and so ideal for kind of productivity and utility. I haven't really had AI pick the best photos between different ones. I've sometimes given it like a range of photos and say like, I don't know, which of these has the best lighting or that sort of thing. But not necessarily to the scope that a photographer would need it, but equally, like, I'm sure you can do that fairly easily. Just tell it what purpose you want, show it the photos, and ask it to choose out of them. So not much to say on that really. How to use Claude or any AI to help you in writing your story? Well, I think it depends what your story is. I don't know. I mean, I'd kind of harken back to the thing I was mentioning earlier with like the candidate brain, and then actually I guess that links to the other question we had about second brains, brain workflows, that sort of thing. If you're going to be looking for a story to tell around, I don't know, I'm assuming this is kind of a personal branding story or that sort of thing, like for content rather than a fictional story. Make a second brain of all your life experiences, that sort of thing. Then, just have a heart to heart with Claude, or just but just brain dump loads of interesting or just random facts about your life, about stuff to Claude, and then make sure Claude also has full understanding of your business. Let's just go with the example of you're trying to make content to promote your business. Claude has full understanding of your business, what it does, how it works, who your ICP is, that sort of thing. And then AI are very good at finding these sort of latent, in my opinion, AI is very good at kind of linking these sort of seemingly disparate random topics together. So if it has all these stories about your life and it knows all about your business, and maybe you give it a really specific business thing you want to promote, it might find a tangential link that you didn't even see before, and then it can help you craft that into a convincing story narrative, especially if you tell it to take some kind of good story writing principles. And now I'm not an absolute expert, but what I would do is get it to do deep research on like what are the best story writing principles. I don't know, like the hero's journey, or is that, who's the scholar who writes about hero's journey? Is it Joseph Campbell? I think it is. I think Campbell's the surname, not sure about the first name. Anyway, maybe you say take that framework and then apply it to my life story tailored to this specific business initiative. The basic fundamental thing is, if you have a kind of second brain or whatever, but really second brain is just a kind of marketing term for a very appropriately set up and enriched context environment, and that contains context about your business and about you. And Claude also has the necessary context about how a story works, then it can help you put them all together, in my opinion. Yes, you might need to refine the kind of actual copy a little bit yourself, but in terms of helping you find links in a storyline, I think Claude Code, Codex could do pretty well there. Is Muse Code a Claude Code killer? Pretty sure Muse Code is I think it's a Meta thing that Zuckerberg came out with just a few days ago, but I haven't checked it out in much detail yet, so can't necessarily say. My initial reaction is probably not. I feel like Anthropic and OpenAI do have a big kind of hold on the market at the moment, because I mean, yes, I see people on X recently complaining about Claude code, but I think it's pretty solid, to be fair. Yes, from my personal experience, I have ended up using Codex a bit more recently. That's just because Claude code was being slow on my laptop over the past few days, because I was having some sort of file issues with my laptop and iCloud. I think they're still both perfectly viable, Claude Code and Codex. I think they have most of the market share when it comes to coding agents, and beyond coding agents, people are actually using like coding agents to manage knowledge work agents. I mean, we'll have to see. I can't comment necessarily because I haven't tried or really even read about Muse code in much detail, so I'm not well placed enough to say, but I wouldn't be too concerned for Claude code if I were Anthropic at the moment. Want to build games like this? Well, it seems like almost every time I end up mentioning Matt Schumer and the Gauntlet Loop. The Gauntlet Loop, which I think is probably technically ought to be called like the Gauntlet Graph, given how popular graph engineering is getting now, and I think it's technically graph engineering because it has different stages of like planning, dividing the different tasks, fanning out sub-agents to do them, having sub-agents review them. I think it probably counts as a graph, but you know, that's getting a bit technical about it. I've gone on about the Gauntlet Loop. I think it's a very cool concept. If you don't know what it is, basically you take something, you just tell Claude Code. So you give Claude Code a like finished example. Like I think that the example Matt Schumer uses is Call of Duty, and it says basically the prompt is like, make a game of equivalent standard to Call of Duty, like a first person shooter game like Call of Duty, and fan out sub-agents to handle the different elements and build them all, and then have sub-agents review all of those in a blind test, comparing them side by side with what the sub-agents, with what like Claude has built and the canonical example, in this case Call of Duty, and until the sub-agent cannot tell the difference, you keep looping over and over again. And basically the idea is you run it in ultra code or ultra, depending on whether you're on Claude code or Codex, which then means that it uses like just way more agents basically, and different workflows. I'll admit I've kind of gone back to using Fable 5 a little bit more than Opus 5. I feel like Fable 5 still is a little bit more intelligent, even if it is slightly pricier and maybe a little bit slower, but I still like it. Anyway, basically you take a very intelligent model that orchestrates everything. It's down to that model to divide the different tasks within the overall task. It's not up to you to tell it what the different parts it should build with different sub-agents are. You've got to let it decide that, and then it does the kind of looping of improving them and that sort of thing. It's a very cool thing. I think it's widely applicable as a concept, and will start to become more and more mainstream with all forms of applications beyond making games. I think it will be used for lots of knowledge work things as well. But yeah, that probably covers it enough for now. Definitely go check out the X article by Matt Schumer on the Gauntlet Loop. Well worth a read. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. So yeah, very long episode today. But just happened that Codex got some good questions in my opinion today, so maybe that is the loop being self-improving as I had hoped. If you did enjoy or thought anything was useful, thanks for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, and yeah, just to mention again, if you'd like to work with me to see how I could help you build out an AI operating system in Claude Code or Codex, or help you find the places where AI would be actually useful in your business and help you grow revenue, then please feel free to book a call through the link in the description. And again, if you'd like to join the school community, that's also in the description. But thanks very much for watching, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow.